Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. And I'm very pleased to tell you that today we have a very special guest, and that is our own New Hampshire U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte. Now, our regular viewers know that I do tend to carry on during introductions, but I don't want to use up a lot of our precious time today, so I'm going to give you a very, very brief biography of the Senator. After receiving a degree in political science from Pennsylvania State University, Senator Ayotte earned her law degree at Villanova University School of Law, and then returned to New Hampshire to begin a very illustrious career that has included clerking for the New Hampshire Supreme Court, serving as a prosecutor in the office of the New Hampshire Attorney General, serving as the legal counsel to Governor Craig Benson, serving as the New Hampshire Deputy Attorney General, and then becoming New Hampshire's Attorney General. She has been our New Hampshire Republican U.S. Senator since 2011 and certainly has gained national recognition through her work on 5 different important Senate committees, which are Armed Services, Commerce, Science and Transportation, Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, Budget, and Aging. She also sits on 11 subcommittees. That's her abbreviated resume, and we're going to go straight to Kelly.
Hey,
thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Kathy.
You have been one busy woman. Every time I turn on TV, you're somewhere speaking, and
well,
just amazing.
It is busy, and it's a privilege to represent New Hampshire. And then one of the most important pieces of my bio, I'm also the mother of an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Well, this is true. Yes, you certainly
So they
are.
keep me busy.
Yes, and you know the amazing thing, for those people who haven't seen your kids, we were talking before we started, your little girl is your image, and your little boy is your husband's image. It's
Yes,
like uncanny.
I know. They're great. And you know, when you especially our daughter Kate, when I see her do things, I'm like, I know where that comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe she'll follow in your footsteps someday. You never know.
I'll probably be following her footsteps. That's what every parent wants. So.
That's true. That's true. Well, we have a lot to cover, and kind of what I sort of decided to do was let's pick the topics that are the most on everybody's lips these days. And I think, you know, one of the top ones is the more time that passes, the more that we're finding out that Americans really have not been given all of the facts related to the Benghazi terrorist attack on our embassy. Now, from the outset, you've been one of the people screaming for answers. Where is it going now, and what should we as citizens be demanding?
Well, I think, Kathy, first of all, the reason that I pursued this from the beginning is that I really didn't seem right to me. There were obviously 4 brave Americans, including our ambassador, that were murdered by terrorists, and then the truth was not coming forward. The facts were not coming forward. In fact, I've had this experience in Washington where I've literally had to push and push and push just to get straightforward information, and there are still many outstanding questions. First of all, you know, we saw with the testimony a couple weeks ago in the House with Gregory Hicks, who was the number 2, who was in Tripoli, was probably the last person to speak with Ambassador Stevens, and you know, where the ambassador said to him, "We're under attack," that there are many questions raised from his testimony, including he mentioned that there were special forces in Tripoli that wanted to go to help in Benghazi and that they were told not to go. And so this is different than what we heard in the Armed Services Committee from Secretary Panetta and General Dempsey. So we need to get to the bottom of why weren't these special forces, why were they told not to go, why weren't they there? Because one of the things that's troubled me from the beginning is we have the greatest military on earth, and during an attack, a 2-tiered attack that occurred over 7 hours, why weren't our military able to provide support, hopefully to try to prevent the second attack on the annex? In addition to that, we have not, we've been pushing to try to get the survivors who are there on the ground. One of the things we took from Mr. Hicks' testimony is that the people who were there that day, they have a lot to offer as to what happened and lessons learned to make sure it doesn't happen again. So we have pushed to ask those witnesses that were there to be able to come forward with protections, whistleblower protections, because as Mr. Hicks also said, essentially he feels he's been demoted as a result of disagreeing with higher-ups in the State Department on things like the testimony that, the statements that Susan Rice gave on each of those Sunday shows, where Mr. Hicks said he was stunned and embarrassed by what she had said. We now know what she said on those shows, of course, was not true. So there are many questions that need to be answered, and the House has been pursuing this. I think most of it will continue to be pursued in the House by the Oversight Committee, but we're going to continue to push for answers in the Senate, particularly on the Armed Services Committee, to know why, if there was a stand-down order given, why was that, who gave it, and making sure that in the future that we have assets in place to be able to protect Americans in these types of situations.
What I think has been particularly astounding is the fact that our president repeatedly made statements that it was not a terrorist attack.
Well, exactly. I mean, obviously there was a lot back and forth on that during the presidential campaign, but very clearly he had made a reference to acts of terror in the Rose Garden right after the event, but then he was asked clearly by 60 Minutes whether, where he clearly said he didn't think it was, or it wasn't clear to him yet that it was a terrorist event. But here's the difference. When Secretary Panetta and General Dempsey, the leaders of our military, came before the Armed Services Committee, both of them told us that they knew this was a terrorist attack from the beginning. And so
they said that right from the get-go.
They said it. They knew it from the beginning. And so that begs the question, why was Ambassador Susan Rice, 5 days after the attacks, on every Sunday show, really denying that it was pre-planned or premeditated, saying things like Al-Qaeda had been decimated, so leaving a misleading impression to the American people. So this was not handled properly right after the event in terms of being straightforward with the American people of what had happened.
No question. And I'd go so far as to say we were lied to.
I would say that it was certainly a cover-up.
Yeah, definitely.
In the context of an election.
Absolutely.
Right.
And for them to deny that is so totally disingenuous.
Right. But most of all, let's get to the bottom of the facts so the American people can know the truth, and so that, by the way, how about the people who committed these horrific acts, holding them accountable, finding them, rooting them out, holding them accountable, and then also making sure we take the lessons learned so it doesn't happen again.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And thanks for staying with that.
Well,
because
I'll continue
certainly a
to
lot of
stay with
legislators did not.
Absolutely. It's important that we get the truth.
Well, without a doubt, the current IRS scandal has Republicans and Democrats, I hope, alike concerned about the power of government in the United States today. And what I'm seeing is that the hearings of the past few days seems to demonstrate a deep-rooted bureaucratic arrogance. What needs to happen now to reverse my distrust, maybe the distrust of many, many Americans of government agencies?
Well, I think, Kathy, first of all, this is troubling. It doesn't matter you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. This has to trouble you, that the IRS would be targeting certain groups, asking them for additional information, sometimes delaying their nonprofit applications because of their viewpoints. And that is truly troubling as an American. So we've got to get to the bottom of this. And what was equally as troubling and frankly outrageous was that Lois Lerner, who was a subsequent head of that unit, came before the Congress a week ago and claimed the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination after giving her version of the story. Right. And so what that shows you is there's clearly concern about criminal liability here. What we need is a thorough, bipartisan investigation. I think we also may need a special counsel that can have subpoena power to make sure that we get to the bottom of it and that those people who committed this are rooted out. We also need to know, was this as a result of a culture at the top? Who set this tone here that led the IRS to believe they could target certain groups based on their viewpoints? And so we have to pursue this, not only the lower level employees, hold them responsible, but also make sure that if this goes higher up, that we hold those individuals responsible. And finally, anyone who had anything to do with this, at a minimum, has to be fired. Perhaps prosecuted, depending on if any crimes were committed. That's why I say the special counsel. And then if there are any changes we need to make legislatively, we do it. Because if the American people can't have confidence that their IRS, it's hard enough dealing with the IRS. The IRS can destroy your life.
Yes, they can.
With what they may do to you as a business or an individual. And so the American people need to have confidence that their government is administering those laws impartially. And so we've got to get to the bottom of it. And unless there's full accountability, then I think it's difficult for the American people to have confidence in the government and the IRS in particular.
Do we know if any New Hampshire organizations were targeted in this? Have you heard yet from any of them?
I have not. I know that there's been some concern by some New Hampshire organizations. Some are hesitant to come forward. So I believe that this is something, if anyone wants to come forward, please, I would encourage them to do so. We want to make sure we get to the bottom of it if you feel you were unfairly targeted. But right now, I haven't had anyone come forward. I had some people behind the scenes raising issues, but there's a lot of fear, a fear of coming forward too, that you may be further persecuted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, the IRS, as you said, can make
has
somebody's
a lot
life
of power.
miserable. Yes, they
That's
do.
why Republicans and Democrats, we've got to stop this. We've got to get to the bottom of this, and there's got to be a no tolerance policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that this is going to quietly go away?
No.
Or do you think there's enough
This
perseverance
cannot
to keep
go
it
away.
going?
This cannot go away.
Okay.
This is about basic confidence in the government. This is about making sure we can't have people think that when the IRS seeks to audit them that they're doing it based on inappropriate criteria. That's a fundamental issue right there. Mm-hmm. Cannot go away. Has to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I certainly can assure the people of New Hampshire that I'm not going to let this go.
Good. And it shouldn't be let go.
No, and I think there's bipartisan agreement on that.
What's happening with our other New Hampshire delegates? Are they honing in on this, or are they kind of staying quiet?
You know, I certainly would expect, I can't speak for them.
No, I mean, just from what you're seeing down in
Washington.
Washington.
I think that they've certainly raised concerns about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think this is, again, this is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue.
No, it's
this
not.
is about basic trust in your government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, literally, and this obviously is a huge hot-button issue to just about everybody, because we're literally on the doorstep of Obamacare implementation. And mass confusion does seem to be reigning nationwide. Should Obamacare be repealed or at least significantly delayed? Should the IRS continue to be the agency that's
and by
going
the
to
way,
be
what
in
we
it?
forgot was the authority given the IRS under Obamacare,
Right.
and that the individual who is in charge of this division, who is now in charge of an important piece of Obamacare on the tax end. So this is a real issue with greater authority. The IRS is hiring new agents, has significant authority to implement Obamacare.
Is it true that it's going to be like 40,000 new IRS employees?
Thousands and thousands. I don't know about 40,000, but thousands and thousands, no question. Think about it. Now the government, if you don't purchase health insurance, they can basically fine you, and that's going to be administered by the IRS. So
That's scary.
it is, and employers can be fined if they obviously don't. If you're have 50 or more employees, and you don't provide a certain type of health insurance for you can be fined there. So there's significant authority given to the IRS under the Affordable Care Act. Here's the thing about the bill. Obviously I never supported this bill. I have voted to repeal it. If certainly there was enough support in Congress, then I would again vote to repeal it, and I would vote to repeal it now. I'm very concerned about the impact of this bill. I think, though, what I'm hearing from constituents is that huge concerns about lack of clarity with the bill becoming law now. Obviously, the president won the election, and he feels strongly about the bill. So even if it got repealed in the Congress, he would veto that. Really huge concerns about they have no idea what it means for them. I have had, at my town hall, I had a man come forward and tell me my wife is a part-time nurse, and they are dropping her hours to make sure that they don't have to comply with the Affordable Care Act, because basically
that has happened to as well.
The way the bill defines part-time employees, 29 hours and under. So some employers are dropping, not because they want to mistreat their employees, because they can't afford it. Health care costs are rising. I'm hearing that from businesses, and this bill is contributing to that. And I think that the issue is real lack of uncertainty, real concern. The promise that was made, if you like your health insurance, you can keep it. That's not true. People are going to get, in some instances, not able to keep the current plan that they have. And so I just don't see this as sustainable in the way that this is structured. And so at a minimum, we're going to have to make some significant legislative changes to it going forward. Obviously, I would continue to support a full repeal, but in the absence of political support for that, we better make changes to make sure that it doesn't hurt people, that people don't have their hours reduced, that people don't have their plans dropped, that people can afford health care.
Is there any potential at all for the implementation to be delayed?
Well, there's always potential in the sense that there are many questions being raised. States that are trying to set up exchanges are having difficulties there. But right now, what it would require for a delay would be support from the Democrats and also support from the president. And so I haven't seen that yet.
Wasn't there recently just a meeting in Manchester that some of the insurers were there, and even they are confused about what will happen here in this state?
Absolutely. There is a lack of clarity. I mean, understand, Kathy, the regulations just implementing this bill are this high that have come out so far. So it's difficult whether you're on the insurance end, the employer, whatever, or you're just a person receiving health care to know what's in those thousands and thousands of regulations and what it means for you. So there is great confution out there.
Well, how is the average person supposed to understand all this?
It's nearly impossible.
It's like a big boondoggle.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible, I think, given that you have people that work in the industry that are still trying to sort this out.
Yeah, and when you see them confused, how can they possibly expect, how can Obama expect the average citizen can even have a clue?
Right.
What the impact or cost or anything
we're
else
already
will
hearing, obviously a lot of problems with implementation, and I would say to your listeners, please share share your feedback with our office, our website, individual stories you have, so that obviously I can bring them to the attention of those in Washington, and also whatever we can do to make, certainly to improve what I don't think was good legislation to start with, but anything we can do to make this so that people can maintain their health coverage is important.
Well, I just read in the past few days in the huge state of California, some of their major health insurers aren't going to be part of this.
Well, and I think that, understanding fully what's in it, what the regulations mean, that each business is making their own decision what they're going to do with the health insurance there, or whether they're going to participate on the insurer end.
And yet, what, December 1st? Is that when it's supposed to take effect?
Right, the exchanges, yes.
And here we are in May.
Yes.
The end of May.
Great challenges. And I really feel also for a lot of small businesses in the state, because they're seeing health insurance costs rise in a way that they just can't afford it. And so the bill didn't address these underlying cost issues that were a problem with the healthcare system to start with. And I firmly believe there needs to be more competition. Certainly this idea of more activity allowing purchases across state lines. The bill actually diminished somewhat health savings accounts. I think we should be expanding it for people, but there's certainly some things I hope that we can do going forward to help address costs.
It's a big one.
Yes.
Another hot issue in recent months has been the attempt to pass a sales tax on online sales. What new burdens would that create right here in New Hampshire? And where is the support for this coming from? I know you have been a strong opponent of it.
This is one of the more outrageous bills to come before Washington. What this bill would do is it really tramples on the choices that New Hampshire has made not to have a sales tax. It would make our online retailers be the tax collectors for the rest of the nation. In other words, and by the way, it's not just that each state has a sales tax. There are over 9,600 tax jurisdictions. So if I go to the
9,600?
9,600, Kathy. So if I'm a small business, internet business here in New Hampshire, and I'm selling to out of state, then I'm going to now have to collect Illinois' tax, I'm going to have to collect Ohio's tax, all these other sales taxes. And
wouldn't that create a whole new bureaucracy?
It is ridiculous in what it does to businesses. And also, I think, not just states like New Hampshire without a sales tax, but online businesses across this country, to make them the tax collectors for states that are looking for money. And basically, why aren't they collecting their own tax? If they're resident, they want to collect taxes from their residents, let them do it. Not make New Hampshire businesses have to collect their taxes and remit it back to other states. And by the way, can you imagine 9,600 tax jurisdictions?
That's ludicrous.
New Hampshire businesses could be audited in those jurisdictions. So it's not just the bureaucratic nightmare of collecting, but it's also that you could be subject to legal process in other states. And how do you afford that as a business? Are you going to have a team of lawyers in other states? It's ridiculous.
What's the status of that right now?
It unfortunately passed the Senate, and now it's pending it's going over to the House of Representatives. And so I certainly hope that the House of Representatives use their common sense and understands that this is just bad for business. It's really bad for growth on the internet, and certainly it's very unfair to states like New Hampshire. I mean, we should respect each state's rights to decide their taxing schemes and not make online businesses the tax collectors for the nation.
So, I mean, essentially that would affect everybody in the state of New Hampshire. So should we be contacting our two
Oh, absolutely. This is a key issue. This is really important to businesses in New Hampshire, and I have heard feedback certainly from all types of businesses in New Hampshire, many of which I mentioned when I spoke on this on the Senate floor. And this is a real issue. And, you know, if the government is going to make these businesses tax collectors for each state, I mean, what will be the next thing? Will they be collecting? It won't be just a sales tax. They'll be collecting other things. I think this is a really troubling, slippery slope.
It is.
Yes.
It is. And it's kind of one of those issues that probably the average person hasn't paid a lot of attention to.
Yeah. They call it, the bill's called the Online Fairness.
Fairness.
Right, Online Fairness Act. I don't,
All depends on your
Kathy,
definition of fairness.
I don't call it the Online Fairness Act. What I call it is the Internet Tax Collection Act.
There you go.
Because that's what it is.
You're right.
Yeah, no, that's a more accurate description of what it is.
You're absolutely right. Well, again, and this is a newsworthy kind of thing that's happening as we're speaking even. We were all shocked in recent days to learn that in the year 2012 alone, there were as many as 26,000, which is staggering, sexual assaults within the U.S. military. Can you give us some background on this, and can you tell us about the legislation that you yourself have just introduced dealing with it?
Absolutely. First of all, we have the best military in the world.
We do.
And so I'm privileged to serve on the Armed Services Committee. As you know, my husband served in the Iraq War. I'm the wife of a veteran. And this is an issue where you have recent reports, 26,000 sexual assaults, only 3,400 reported where people felt they could come forward. Examples.
Now, fear
of not being supported within the system. Wow. And so this is something that is just totally unacceptable. And we cannot accept this in the greatest military on earth, because what it does is it undermines the cohesiveness of a unit, it undermines our readiness, it undermines, you think about the important esprit de corps within the military of people working together, men and women. And so this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Having been a prosecutor and having worked on, certainly been familiar with the work done on sexual assault cases, there's a lot that we've done in the civilian sector that the military is just behind on. And so I've co-sponsored a bill with Patty Murray from Washington. We'll be making sure that victims of sexual assault in the military, get special victims counsel to be able to help them through the legal system, to address them and protect their rights, and also making sure that within the command structure, when a charge is brought, that it is not necessarily your direct commander who decides if a charge is brought, that we've made a mechanism where...
Is that the way it is now?
Right now it is.
Really?
There's a conflict of interest. They can go up in the chain of command to make sure that they are, we eliminate conflicts of interest. So, because it's very difficult often for people to come forward now the way the system is set up. And it's still, our bill still keeps it in the chain of command, but allows you to go up higher for that decision. And also, I think very importantly, we have to address, Secretary Hagel has proposed some changes to Article 60, which is the authority of commanders to overturn convictions, and that's work that we're going to continue to do in the Armed Services Committee.
A commander can overturn?
A commander can overturn a conviction, yes, right now under Article 60 in the military. So the issue is making sure that we address this, we root it out. Most of all, what we need to do is send the message to the military and support those in the military. Most people, vast, overwhelming men and women that serve are fantastic. And we need to support them and hold the perpetrators accountable. And if you're in the command structure and you don't address this properly, then you should be fired too. So this is a very serious issue. We can address it working with the military, because the military does want to make sure that they address it. And that's why I've been working on this issue. It's been a bipartisan issue. We're working together with the military to make sure we address this, and they have the right tools to stamp this out.
And a military career certainly is a noble profession.
Oh, amazing. I mean, you know, I'm married to a veteran, and it's funny, my husband Joe's reaction, I think, was very telling when I was talking to him about this. He's like, that's just outrageous. I think the men and women who serve right now, who think that they're, you know, certainly know someone who's been a victim of sexual assault or have been a victim themselves or know of this happening, they want it to end more than anything.
I'm sure they do.
So making sure that they have the support and making sure that they have the right laws in place, I think that's it, to give them that support.
Well, thank you for filing that.
Well, thank you.
That's
Appreciate it,
important.
Kathy.
Believe it or not, we are down to 2 minutes.
Oh, great.
And rather than me just kind of invent a question, because I don't claim to be an expert on all this national stuff, I'd like you to be able to address our audience directly on what you feel is the most important thing that they should be thinking about, what they can do to help you in your efforts right now on the important issues.
Sure. I would say to your audience, most of all, their feedback is very important to me. So whether you're a small business owner, you're worried about health care, taxes, regulations, issues that impact your lives, you know, please give me your feedback. And please understand, I will read and review legislation very carefully, and I'm interested in passing legislation that very much addresses issues, not just passing a law to think that we've to make people feel better, but really to do, if we're going to pass a law, let's make sure it's effective, and frankly, let's make sure that we know what's already in place, and is that working? And so reviewing your government, rooting out wasteful spending, things that where we know, we've seen it, I've seen it in every area of government, where we've got duplication, waste, and fraud. So I'm going to continue to focus on those issues, but I ask for your feedback, and I appreciate, it's such a privilege to serve New Hampshire, and most of all, knowing what's on my constituents' minds. I really appreciate it.
And you do have 5 New Hampshire offices that are staffed, correct?
I do, yes.
So people can
Absolutely.
reach somebody with you very quickly.
Yes, very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Now we'll put some contact information up at the end of the show too, so that people will know how
Thank
to
you, Kathy.
make contact.
Thanks for having me today.
Well, believe it or not, we're out of time.
Thanks.
And I hope I can get you back again, and maybe next time we can shoot for a 1-hour show.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you so much,
Great
Senator.
to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as I said at the beginning of the show, we were very delighted that Senator Ayotte was able to be with us because her schedule is incredible. The demands on her time are phenomenal. So I much appreciate it. And I think we hit on some of the hot button issues. You've heard her. Senator Ayotte has had a reputation all along, long before she got to the U.S. Senate, of telling it like it is. So we couldn't have had a more perfect guest than her today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, you tell it like it is. Bye-bye.